Yeah, hey everybody. She tro higlini na shledo na kai chin na planet na dash chedo na kai dash nala tisaan de na sha. She Alicia Good Soldier Yunashia. Good evening, relatives, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Alicia Good Soldier, and I am the Language and Culture Coordinator. Coordinator at the Phoenix Indian Center. And so for those of you new to us, the Phoenix Indian Center is the largest of its kind in the country, serving the third largest and fastest growing American Indian population in the Phoenix metro area, with over 150,000 American Indians. And we provide services in the areas of workforce development, language and culture enrichment, youth services, and substance abuse and suicide prevention programs to more than 7,000 people annually. And this year, the Phoenix Indian Center is celebrating its 75th anniversary. And with that comes a series of community events focused on culture throughout the year. So keep a lookout on our social media and on our website for those events. And a lot of you probably attended our signature events already, some of our signature events, including the community fashion show that happened back in March, in which Wilfred was a featured fashion designer. So we're really excited that he's agreed to come back and join us in tonight's event, along with his sister Winifred. I will be sending out a survey in the morning, so please take a couple minutes to take it and let us know what you thought of this evening's event. And please remember to mute yourselves, and if you have questions throughout the talk, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll get them answered. We have our CEO here with us, Jolana Begay-Kropa, so I would like for her to say a couple things. Go ahead, Jolana.
Oh, ado yat et anotso ade da isanos ahi dan himnatliki yat et anotso nihidini dole ado she et hachi ni nishledo tsenajini e tashje ashche et ashche ado ye idene et hachi ni idashanale ado she ayesina shahado e Tsahotso ade nasha ade shiyaho ado shamasane e tsafnos de narand ahot a sanen nishle akohok ad hosdo de eke hashtinto Phoenix Indian Center de nashnish. So I want to welcome each and every one of you to our virtual event that we are hosting. My name is Jolana Begay-Kropa, and I am the newly appointed Chief Executive Officer for the Phoenix Indian Center. Alicia has done such a great job in sharing about our event and also putting together these wonderful programming tied to our language and cultural efforts within the organization. So as she stated, we are the oldest Indian Center in the country, and this year we are celebrating our 75th anniversary in providing services to our urban American Indians. A large percentage of our target population are Diné, about 30% are Diné people who live in the Phoenix area, but I know there are also many that live in other major metropolitan cities. And through this really neat feature of virtual programming through Zoom, we're able to connect with one another. And so I'm sure some of you are on Diné Bikeya and others are off Diné Bikeya. I don't think everyone is in the area of the Phoenix Valley, and that's okay. And so we're just, fortunate to be able to provide programming in this capacity. We're thankful for our presenters, Shadeja, Winifred, Ado, Shadsile, Shin Hot Ak, and the Shnido Lejo, Winifred, Eyaha Shadeja, Hot Ak, Epidemic. Ako ahihat I just admire you both so much for your connection to community and your amazing artistry and just always being there on multiple levels, whether it be for, many different avenues. I'm just very thankful for you both. And thank you so much for agreeing to serve as presenters for our language and culture virtual storytelling. Moving forward, we have lots of other events planned. So please follow us on our social media platforms, or else you can sign up for our newsletter. I'm sure Alicia will place our website in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and welcome to our virtual storytelling. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll turn it over to Winifred and Wilfred.
Thank you very much for joining us on this fine evening. Everyone is looking very well. So I'm going to go ahead and begin this presentation, and then the next segment will be covered by my younger brother, Wilfred. So I will begin here. So I'm going to be discussing the significance of Diné outfits. I prepared this presentation myself. She'eya Winnifred Jumbo Yinishya, Naka Diné initially, do Teknisani a Bashichin, Hushklishni Dashiche, do Tachini a Dashinale, do Nile Bista Letso, the Bustike dent Ayisanasha, de a Shamahalo, do Shitsilike etka, Atla a Shina a what our son initially. Do Seheli di a Kahasht in Dishje, de a Shina Nishalo. Diné College a Banashnish dual credit program a begit in a what a nishnat it. So good evening, everyone in the virtual world. To each and every one of you. I'm very humbled and excited to be here with you all. I originate from Two Gray Hills, New Mexico. There are my roots. It's my hometown. If you can see in the photo there, in the picture where there are two young individuals. That's me and my older brother. We were definitely song and dance Tiny Tot champions back in the 90s. So that's really something I like to share. The backdrop there is actually a Two Gray Hills rug design. And in our culture, we call it the completed rug de yoge. And I come from a community that I'm very proud of, Two Gray Hills. We're known for the textiles of that. So if you look at the color coordination, you see natural wool. So black, gray, brown, and white. And that was something that the women in our community agreed upon, that in order to create something beautiful, sometimes you have to go with the natural shades of our flock of sheep that we have. So very fortunate enough to know that about my community and represent it in terms of what it has become and evolved into. So I come from a long lineage of weavers. So my mom originates from a place called Keith-Lejeune, a Black House Valley, and it's right off 491 when you're cruising to Newcomb between Gallup and Shiprock. So that's my origin in terms of the people who weave there, and they are very well known. My I guess you would call them in our English language, my grandmothers, my paternal aunties, and even my brothers and my cousin brothers. They weave rugs to this day, and I'm really proud of them because we don't actually, say it's only for women or it's only for men. In our community, I know there were well-known weavers known as male weavers, and they've had their flocks with them in terms of the sheep that they raise and herd. So that's where I come from, and Tlabasike is Navajo term. So when you think about all the popular communities across Navajo Nation, I think there's like 110 categorized chapter houses geographically. But if you dig deep into where you come from, more than likely you come from a community with another given name. So Two Gray Hills, they call it Bistahletso. But then when you dig deeper and you start to know about your surroundings, they describe things. And up where my Nullies live, it's called Labastike. There's two little hills, and that's what they refer to when they say, I used to say, the older people would be like, what out? Well, yes. So they would say, no, you're from the Two Little Hills. You're not from Bistahletso. So it's really nice. So I encourage each and every one of you to research that next step of categorization of where you come from. Ask your grandparents or your aunties and see where that comes from. And then back to my intro, I do have a mother that I adore. Everyone says that I look like her. So I always say, well, who am I supposed to look like? I look like my mom, and her name is Vita Frank, and she's a mother to myself and 4 boys. She has her Yaj, all 4 of them, and then I'm her only daughter. But I really appreciate my mom because she is a hard worker, and we're talking about storytelling, and I really like her concept of hard work, and she really encourages us to be who we are and explore our creativity. And a lot of what we're going to talk about stems from my mother, because she was raised with a lot of siblings, a lot of cousins, and a lot of the tools and concepts that she learned was through watching, observing, being humble. And every time we ask her, like, how did you learn how to sew? How did you learn how to weave? How did you learn how to do this and that? And, in our culture, there's always that distinction that some families have rich heritage and they teach each other things from generation to generation.
I gotta pee.
Some other families, they actually, they don't have that fortunate, humble beginning where they teach one another, but rather they expect you to learn through observation. So I'll talk about those in detail. And then in the photo there is my Mustane. My Mustane, her name is Bessie Napoleon. My middle name is Bessie. So a lot of people call me Bessie because I think it resonates with them. And that's my middle name. And she is our matriarch. She is the only one. She comes from my great grandmother. Her name was Mary Lou Brown, and she's from Kingston, Black House Valley. And then you have Bessie, who was her only daughter. And then my grandmother had 6 children, and it was 3 boys, 3 girls. So that's where my mom comes from. And that's where our Diné matrilineal clan system comes from. And if you're Twoehed Lini or No Diné, you're probably my sister or my brother. So that's who we stem from. And they always say, talk about your clan. And a lot of times it's interpreted in numerous capacities. Diné, when you say it, they say, oh, you're a Mexican people clan. But we were told through, when we have our family gatherings that they're walking around over there. So that's kind of like where it stems from as well. So you're not necessarily only referring to the ethnicity of the Mexican people, but rather they're walking around over there. So that's where the clan stems from. And then Tkatnizahnis are my dad's. And my father passed on, I would say we're going on 13 years now. His name was Freddie Jumbo. And as you can imagine, Winifred. So that's where my name comes from as well. So I just reflect upon who I am in my introduction, because a lot of you probably have that type of story within your own identity and where you come from. And and you don't really reflect upon it until you get older. And I'm getting older, so I think about a lot of things and where I come from. There again is my other brother, Wilfred. He's my Shitsulayaje, so he's my younger brother, and we almost have the same name, and people always mistaken our names for one another. And I get all these messages on Facebook saying, "Can you make me an outfit?" I'm like, "Me? You want me to make you an outfit?" I say, "I'm not as fancy as Wilfred," and they kind of like, "Oh, I thought you were." And so we tell them, "Okay, that's my younger brother, Wilfred." And a lot of the pictures that I have are basically of us going to song and dances and enjoying ourselves. And Hashlishnis are my Che. So my late Che was Johnson Frank. He again stemmed from Zilnaodithli area. That's where he was originally from. And then Tachini Dashinale. So Tachini is up by Tortolina Mountain. So as you can imagine, Two Gray Hills, Tortolina are in close capacity. So all my jumbo relatives are from the base of Twohanle Mountain, just right over wheat fields. For those individuals who live in the Arizona side, I just right over the mountain. That's where my Nullies are from. And that's where I wanted to just introduce myself and formally share where I'm coming from. And now we're going to talk about the concepts of clothing in terms of Diné clothing and how it plays a part in our everyday culture and our world. So I picked this photo here because it looks nice. I'm just kidding. No, this is me in the picture there. It was taken by Matt Totolito, and he is a renowned photographer, and he can just capture the beauty and essence of individuals. And I was really fortunate enough to be in a photo session with him, and I brought what I thought would, encapsulate what it means to be Diné or a Diné Estan. And in here you have, in this picture alone, you can captivate Aligo Nalyehe. So when we talk about Nalyehe in our culture, that means who we are and what we encompass. They talk to you like that in our culture. They say, you're going to have your foundation. What is that going to be? What does that encapsulate? And for us as women, we actually have so many things that we're blessed with. And all of it really comes from Nehemanna Hassan. Mother Nature takes care of us, and we should take care of it. And we can't reiterate that enough, because if you look in the back there, you have the tools that women utilize, and they all come from Mother Earth. You call the be'ejo, the brush. You can brush your hair with it, but you can also use it in the kitchen setting where you can gather your corn grinds. You can actually look in the back, and it's all coming from Mother Nature. And she restores beauty and helps us, balance who we are and where we're coming from. If you look more to the side there, you have our weaving tools. As Navajo women, we have tools that we can utilize no matter where we are and no matter where we're going. If you have these foundations, you know that, you always have something to look forward to and learn and appreciate from. And then is a task A. So when we talk about our belongings, what do we honor? What do we like? What do we appreciate, and what do we give back? And they come from Mother Earth again. All the stones and the gems that we wear, it comes from Mother Earth, and it's sacred. In that sense, you can already identify it, whether it's from a traditional concept or a scientific concept. Things that come from Mother Earth are valuable, and we should take care of it. So any of the stones, again, that we utilize, any of our whether it's our jewelry that we're adorned with, or if it's the stones that we offer back to Mother Earth for her good health, so that we can have rain, so that we can have moisture, so that our communities are in balance. So I wanted to share those concepts with you all to start thinking and reflecting about what makes us Diné, and is it just the materialistic things, or is the concept of being a Diné Estan even deeper? So I just wanted to touch upon that, because we'll be talking in depth, not too much in depth, but we'll go over the the concepts that we can just generally learn from together as a group here, because all of our levels of knowledge and foundations and teachings come from various backgrounds. Each community, each family, each generation, we all have different ways of interpreting things. And that's the really fun part about being a Diné or being a part of the Navajo culture and philosophy. And I think as I get older, that's what I imagine, and that's what I hope for, is that rather than, like just having one mindset, it's like we were able to share each other's stories and learn from one another and basically celebrate who we are, because there is not one definition of defining a Navajo woman or what we're supposed to be or how we're supposed to be. It varies. And that's the really cool thing about being a part of a society that's matrilineal. And I'm just really happy that we have that opportunity to be who we are. And again, in there, it's not just clothing that you're adorned with, but in our culture, just having hides, buffalo hide or a cougar hide, and it depends. Like if you can go all the way even to a badger hide, it has meaning, it has significance, it has the token of where you're coming from as a family, and for the young males in attendance, that's where their clothing comes from, whether they want to make a quiver or have it as a hide that they can utilize during ceremonies. So it just really depends on you as a person. So we're going to start off with our kefche moccasins. So as most of you have seen, moccasins are our foundation to Mother Earth. You walk with these moccasins across many miles. You wear them during ceremonies. You wear them during graduations. You wear them every day. But you got to be careful with where you put your steps and your path. Some of the things that we celebrate is the cultural stories affiliated with them. Where do these things come from? How do they impact us on a daily basis? So kefche, that's kefche. So you can say it both ways. Again, women wear this, men wear this. Some of the foundations of it is that it represents the universe. It represents our connection to the foundation of Mother Earth. So you walk and do good things in these shoes. And you want to always have your own pair of moccasins, because you're not supposed to wear others' shoes. And I think that's always been instilled in my mind as a younger girl, because I don't know, when you're raised like in a household where you have multi-generations, like for me, it was like my aunties, my grandmothers, and my mom, dad, and cousins and things of that nature. You start to learn from one another, and they don't always tell you why. I know that's common among our society, but I'm beginning to understand why people don't just tell you teachings straightforward, because they want you to yearn to find answers. They also want you to learn on your own about why you don't do these things. And for the kefche, some of the things that we celebrate, our accomplishments, whether it's like an educational degree, we get our finest clothing and dress up, whether it's to go attend a ceremony on behalf of a relative to help them heal. We put out our moccasins. We wear them to parades when we want to celebrate our heritage together. We wear them when we go running. I've seen youth run cross-country meets with these shoes, not shoes, kefche. And, they have meaning and significance, and they're yours. You should always make it to where it is yours and it belongs to you. You don't, again, wear other people and their moccasins, because most time they always say when you put corn pollen in both of them and you put it in there for yourself, those are your moccasins. You keep them. You keep reverence by wearing them, and only you wear them. There are teachings that go with kefche, meaning you don't wear them also to grave sites. You don't wear them where people are being left to go into the spirit world. So it's basically being reverent upon the teachings of kefche. Another one is Kenetsa. So in my own upbringing and culture of diversity and trying to understand what we're expected to do and how pretty much how we can live in a world and what are the practicalities associated with moccasins. So Kenetsa, there's all different takes on this. There's takes where it's only for women or it's only for this occasion, or so it really comes down to your home teaching about how you were taught. So for me, I started wearing my Kenetsa very young. But in the old culture and tradition, you're not supposed to actually wear those until you reach your golden years as a woman. You have to earn these moccasins. And that is given until you have reached the area of white hair, you're knowledgeable, you've been on Mother Earth for quite some time, and all your teaching and wisdom is showcased through your white hair. That's one thing that I've recently learned. I wasn't taught that specifically, but I know now why there's additional teachings. But now you see that our Kenetsa is worn by various age groups, various capacities of how it's worn. So in my take of it personally, I like to wear mine for special occasions, or of course, if I'm helping at a ceremony such as the kinalda, then I'll wear it there. And it's a beautiful, shoe, basically. I mean, you can call it a shoe if you wanted to, but it has wrappings that represent, again, the universe. When we're touching ground with Mother Earth, it's beyond us. It's embedded in the multiple layers of, you can say, like the clouds, you can say the universe represents more than what it, what we know of it, but it has so much more in there. And Kenetsa. And then I've even heard stories where Kenetsa were worn even by male because of the terrain that we live in, more of practical usage in terms of like, there's a lot of cacti whoosh. But then you have people who say, well, it wasn't the Kenetsa, it was the long moccasin wrap. So there's other styles where the wrap is mainly just the cowhide and up all the way to the ankle area for the men. So that's another take on moccasins and what it represents. So I just wanted to share the Navajo translation of it as well. So if you want, you can practice saying it, Kenetsa, Kenetsa. And it's a very intro concept, but like, I think sometimes we just need to be reminded about some of the phrases that are associated directly to each item. Let's see here. Kush. So if you guys want to say that one too, kush. And I think for me, when I'm speaking English in Navajo, I have to really, enunciate it. Kush, and it sounds better, and it flows well. So one story to this is I recently started sewing. So I'm very happy that I had a mother who was really creative. Like I mentioned in my intro, I always saw her sewing like all the time, and I never understood how much work goes behind that and how much creativity goes behind it. I always was that daughter that was like, Mom, this is a pretty material, this fabric, can you make me a blouse? Can you make me a skirt? Like telling her I want a new outfit. And never in my mind did I understand the details and the labor that goes behind it until one day I bought a sewing machine and I was like, here it goes. I grew up in a household where sewing was pretty common. I should be able to catch on. And I started, and I was surprised. I actually just about fell over after I made my first skirt, and it took me probably like 6-8 hours to make. And from then on, I realized that, compassion and love is shown in different capacities. So my mother never complained to me saying, no, we can't make this skirt for you or this blouse top for you. she never said that. And I over here like, oh gosh, I probably would be the first one to say that. Like, I can't finish this for you. But my mom never said anything like that. And when I was still a toddler, like I said, I used to go into song and dances with my brother, and we would dance, and she would make us the matching outfits. And I just never knew that it actually required that much work. And when you talk about Lakas, that was the first piece that I made on my own. And that's a story segment for myself and my experience. And there are numerous teachings with the Lakas, the skirt, the 3-tiered skirt. In any capacity, if you look at the first tiers there, which is this first layer, they call it tier. They say it represents your youth, you're young, very, it goes like out and it flares out. So you look at your experiences, there's not very many, but it's there. Then you go down, it represents your adulthood life. You have some experiences, not a lot, but you're learning, you're growing. Then you hit the bottom there, and look how much life is down there. It's full. You have experiences, you have knowledge, you have all types of learning mechanisms, and you basically have a family lineage that you're going to be a part of. You become a matriarch in some sense, that you are now someone people look up to and seek advice from. You're holding down your homestead, you're building yourself to your fullest capacity. So that's something to consider when you talk about Lakas. And from my own personal experience, I always loved wearing skirts. I have pictures from when I used to hang out at the sheep corral with my grandma. And it wasn't just traditional skirts that I liked. I used to have like a full-blown Sunday dress almost every day. I just loved it. Like, I loved dressing up, even though I was just like at home with my grandma and my aunties. Like, I don't know what it was. I just liked skirts, and I was always drawn to it. And all of us in this room, I'm pretty sure like 90% of us, maybe even all of us here, have that experience of following around your grandmother. And my grandmother, her name was Linda Slowboy. Shanella Isan Linda Slowboy. She was a woman of humble beginnings and never would hurt a fly in her life. And Diné Attire yaftkit nindant don the Bilagana Bizad yaftkita Shadea ayo Bilagana Bizad yashtit nindant. She never, I just loved following her around. Like, she would wear her cut and her dejant, and she would do the work around the house, like feeding the lambs, bringing in chish, making bread outside just because she wanted to. She just had a really awesome life that I always wanted. Like, I would follow her around and hold on to her skirt and, follow her, mimic whatever she did. Like, and she would always wear her scarf around her head and drink hot coffee in the summertime, sit outside, enjoy herself. And I always followed her, and I never knew why. And my dad would tease me and say, you don't need to like do everything she does. And I would be down at the sheep corral early in the morning, helping her feed the lambs, even though they would bite my fingertips. Like, I still went back. And if you ever have like a glass bottle, like those Coke bottles, and when you pour milk in there, it makes that sound. Like, that's where my memory jumps. Anytime somebody's pouring something in a glass, I immediately go back to the times where we used to feed the goats and the lambs early in the morning. And it just was like that comfort and that ability to say, I belong here. I'm a part of something. I have somebody I can look up to just right here. I don't have to go and search the internet and try to be somebody else I wasn't, even though I don't think there was internet back in 1991, but like there probably was, but I just had my grandmother right there, and hiding behind her. Like, when people would stop by to visit, you would go behind her skirt. I think some of my aunts even have a picture like that, where I'm like peeking behind her skirt, looking to see who's coming to visit. And then there's the other side of that. So there's all the fun side of your memories, and then there's the other side of the strict teachings, So one of my che on my mother's side, my matrilineal side, he was a hatathli, a medicine man, and he was strict. He was like, if you're a woman, you have to wear your skirt when you go into the ceremony. You have to be reverent. You have to be respectable. You have to learn how to maneuver yourself as a woman using these types of teachings. You go cook with your skirt. You go sit down. You be reverent. And I was kind of already used to it. Like, and then I would just see like the older women or, somebody getting nonchalant about it. And that happens a lot when you get nonchalant, when somebody tells you how to do something and they're not always going to do it in a nice way, but they mean well. And I would always reflect upon that. And he would say, no short skirts. No, you don't wear that kind of skirt. You're supposed to wear a long skirt. You know who you are. You be respectable of yourself. So that kind of like teaching balanced myself out. And that's what they say in our Navajo culture is you have to have balance. So you have on my case, it seemed like my Nellies were really, humble and like kind of nice. And at the same time on this side, you want to be taught, you got to say, you got to listen. And that was always the case. You have to be able to endure teachings. And when people teach you things about how you ought to be or how they recommend, they mean it because, and they say it in a stern way because they love you. They want you to know yourself and also represent yourself in a humble and a thoughtful way, that you're not missing the marks of just these smaller teachings of being a Navajo woman specifically. So, I encourage each and every one of you to try it, be that person that someone can look up to and say, that's the reason why I know what this means, because my auntie taught me, my cousin's sister taught me. And for me, it was my Nella Isan Linda. I had very fortunate enough to just grow up around her and follow her around. And now when I dress up on a daily basis, as much as I can, I try to be that person for people that I don't know. So when I'm like at Target or Walmart in Farmington, New Mexico, I have younger girls who's like, can I touch her skirt? Can I touch her shirt? And it's nice. It's nice that our young girls want to be like us. So we have to be that role model and step up to the plate. And that's how I always reflect. I'm like, I'm not trying to like show off or, be better than somebody. I'm trying to help our young ones understand how it feels to be around our culture, whether it's like around the Nebizad or just seeing how our elder women dressed. And sometimes they call it Moccasins skirt, but I think in our culture, I have my Nola Estan, and I could imagine most people who are my Moccasins age now, they probably dress like that as a young girl too. So it's not only for older people, it's for all people. So I just wanted to remind people on that part of my story. Digit or digit. So blouse, or in the case of a men's shirt. So these I both made actually. And this was just recently. I was learning how to do the collared portion of sewing. Whew, that's like I don't know how the seamstress and the tailors do it, but that is one skill, the collar. So a young gentleman asked me to make him a collared shirt for a ceremony, and who am I to tell him no, right? So I was like, oh, Mom, you have to teach me how to sew. And she taught me how to do the collar of a men's shirt. And then this one here is my own shirt. I was playing around with like how I want my clothes to look and how I want to, dress up every day, like I mentioned earlier, because I want to build myself. I want to be better every day. I want to, explore my creativity alongside teaching others about, how women in my family were dressing, or how they just wore their clothes every day, and there's really no special occasion. It's just that they liked dressing that way. And I really am getting to understand how that impacts us on a daily basis. And then I wanted to also just mention the Sash belt. And this one here is very instrumental in a lot of our philosophy as Diné women. used in various capacities, as I have written there, traditional as ceremonies. So when you go to a ceremony, especially one of the most well-known ones that's been carried on from generation to generation, the kinalda ceremony, they utilize the sash belt as part of when they're dressing up the young lady in her ceremony. When it's about to begin on that morning, they sing songs and you dress her up, and one that's mentioned is the sash belt. It represents the rainbow. It represents growth and development. And when you wear your sash belt, this is one that I always used to not be a fan of, because when my mom used to put it on me, she's like, stand still. And I know some of you ladies in here know that feeling, or young girls. Stand still, and you hold it, and you hold the yellow, the white ones, and then they pull it around you, and it's like, oh, and you're sitting there real straight and posture, and you're sitting like that, and you're proud of yourself. And that's one thing that I wanted to mention alongside the sash belt. Be proud of yourself, sit up straight, like, take care of your body. And I'm one to say where I didn't take care of my body for a couple of years, and I noticed that it was becoming very unhealthy, very I couldn't keep up with what I should be doing, like physically. And one thing that I was reminded was, you have these tools here within your own culture, utilize it. You were brought up as a young girl that you knew what was important: your health, your mentality, your stability of being a person. Take care of your soul, like that is all encapsulated in this sash belt. Like, sit up straight, stand straight, take care of your back. And then you talk about running. When you have your kinalda, you run every day, and that's embedded up here. Get up in the morning, get up. The lady, like, I remember my aunt always used to say that when I was younger. Go run. And I was like, what does she mean by that? And then when my kinalda came, when I had my ceremony, and now I understood what that all meant, is you had to be strong and resilient as a lady, no matter what, or even as a young man. You had to take care of your body. That's all you get. That's who you are. It represents everything that you've worked hard for. So don't just throw it away. And it's hard. We have so many not yet around, like chips, hot Cheetos, soda. We have so many conveniences at our hand, but if you work for your food with the grinding of your corn, making your own vegetables, growing them outside, then you appreciate your hard work, and you really take care of your body. And I just want to reiterate that, and not just your body, but your soul. What we can't touch, nobody can take your soul. And when we talk about clothing or protection, your soul is only yours. And if you take care of it with just these tools of sash belt, eating right, running, the concept of traditional food, corn, beans, squash, our nut, which is our sacred smoke, you're beginning to understand like how your life is important and why it's important for you to be humble. And then I listed again on the modern side, and some of us see our royalty wearing sash belts as their sash. It's like their protection across them. And they represent numerous things, not just royalty or pageantry, but they represent their organization, who they are, and what families they come from. It builds their stamina. It builds their self-confidence too, to go out and be a part of the world and showcase their culture, language, their teachings. And I'm always a fan of pageantry. I like it because it makes me really happy on the inside when I go to a pageant and you see all my tsila or my deja ke, they're all excited. They have a big smile and they're over there with their finest attire. And, it's just humbling, and they're talking the nebazad. And it's just one thing that I think that as part of this concept of dressing up, it goes beyond just dressing up. It goes into like feeling good about yourself. Sislagai is the concho belt. And I know that's how we pronounce it from where we are from, Sislagai. It has evolved. It goes over the sash belt. Back in the days when we were still in warfare, in that type of capacity of early settling, it represented how many Spaniards or Mexican, ethnicities that you've come across and how much you've taken from them, because they had the silver or this type of material and you adore it around your waist. Or I know some of the women had things like the naja or the beads made out of silver or any type of metal. So it represents a lot. But nowadays you can look at it as your protection, a literal protection piece. And then your necklace. So every time, as I become more mature, I remember being younger and I'm like, I want a choker, like I want the short one, the contemporary one. And everybody be like, oh, yo, what down? The yo ish, and the yo, it's supposed to be long and supposed to be humble and mature. And now I get it, but I had fun, wearing different types of jewelry and style. But now I know like what they meant in terms of your yo. Your yo is your protection, your longevity. And you know how to represent yourself by wearing one, and of course longer ones in terms of how it hangs low, and you can always see your life, the longevity in it. There's various capacities of how much you can own in terms of the different varieties. They have turquoise, the coral, or you have your mother of pearl, or even your white shell. And, there's even spiny oyster that people have, and they become very creative. And that's what really I like about my outfits. I call them outfits of the day. You're on Instagram, they have cool like terminology. So I always say, I'm an outfit of the day. What am I going to wear? And I always think of my yacht. I like my yacht. I like the beads and the jat-oth that hangs from there. You always have that jat-oth, and in the picture there's a jat-oth hanging, and we'll talk about the jat-oth now. So the jat-oth earrings. So I always go back and forth with this one because my aunt always used to say, so I was like, what? I listen. And so they were talking about like when you're naughty and you don't listen, you're gonna get your ears pierced. I guess they used to say that to one another a long time ago when growing up. So, but there's different, like I said, capacities of jat-oth. There's silver one, and turquoise one, clustered work, different types, but this is like kind of like the older version. And I bought this off of a Santo Domingo jeweler, and he said that he liked it because I was like, which one would you get? Like, how would you categorize this? And he's like, I like this one because it's kind of like traditional, and it has like the red on the bottom there in our culture, and it just is a celebration of like not only being able to dress up every day, but also a celebration of how we have neighbors who are our own native relatives, and a lot of cross trading happened in the past, a lot of understanding of trading networks, I guess you would say, because even in my own lineage, my grandmother always used to say, we used to go all the way to Dulce, and we're from like the Four Corners, not necessarily Four Corners region, but more like along the Chisca Mountains. And they used to travel by wagon all the way to Dulce and trade with Pueblos and Apaches. And that's not only just jewelry, but like food, moccasins, and they get to know one another, even learn some phrases among each other. And I just was like, that must have been fun. Can you imagine just like traveling with your family on wagon and meeting other individuals? And now we just drive to the flea markets and then we get all of our goods and we're back home. So I really just wanted to share some of those like stories alongside what we have become and how we're evolving and how we have the capacity to be the change. And last, I think this is one of my last items that I have here is the letsine. So this one here, it's like your protection. Again, anything that you talk about is like protection wise. And, you know, you can have various letsine. They can be different styles. They can be different colors. They can be different varieties. There's no set criterion on what type of stones you need to wear as a person. It's up to your own preference and up to who you want to be and become. And I know a lot of times there's also things of the nature of like, well, you know, your jewelry is not real. I don't know if someone has ever said that to you, but it's kind of insulting because you don't say that to individuals because it might be an heirloom that was passed down from generation to generation, and you never like say those things about people. So always be mindful of that. And I think that's something our culture has, you know, on the negative side of things, like that's not real silver, or that's not, it's like you don't say that to people. That's their stuff, that's their knowledge, that's who they are, and that's what they're going to wear. You never kind of judge people about what they're wearing. And I think that's one thing we have to be humble about. Yosa, those are your rings. So generally you can wear, I would say, on your ring fingers, but you never wear them on your pointer or your thumb or your pinky. So always try to keep them on your middle finger or your ring finger. They always say that there's like taboos associated with, because your pointer is kind of like sacred. You never point at rainbows. You never wear rings on your pointer. It's going to cut things. So you always, remember they always say, go like that to the rainbow. Don't take pictures of the rainbow and things like that. And it's just something that I wanted to share with you all. And it's a lot to encompass because we all come from different backgrounds, like I keep mentioning. Tsiyed, your hair bun. And I'm going to be the first in here to say, you know, like, young ladies, keep your hair beautifully long. Like, I never understood why my mom was so strict with me on that. Like, she was like strict. And now I know because I'm older now and my hair is thinning out. I'm like, I should have never cut my hair. I should listen to my mom. And I have a younger cousin, Shadeja. She has real beautiful, long, thick hair. And I'm over here like braiding one braid down the side. And I'm like, her one braid is like one side of her hair. And she just laughs at me, my little cousin. But your TA is important. And I am one to say that you can wear them in various capacities. Again, this one here on the picture there is a tzit. And when what I was, you know, mentioning about different teachings is the fringes on the bottom are for younger girls, like the ones that haven't been yet married or don't have children, and they have that adorn that represents the female reign. But, you know, again, that varies from family to family. They also have hairpins now, like that are adorned with dot iji, and you can push it through as a barrette. They also have beaded barrettes. They have different types of crocheted barrettes that you can also poke through your hair bun to keep it in place. But they always say keep that well maintained. And in our deeper Navajo culture and philosophy about kinalta too, they always have that ceremony when the get-go, right from the first day. They use a hide, deer hide, to make that sito. It's not really made out of yarn, but you put it and you tie four rounds, tie it, and you always leave the front hanging your hair. And they always say the reason why you do that is when you get older, you don't want to have a bald spot. You want to keep your hairline nice and thick. And so that's what they do with the bejo, the brush. So when you see a kinalta, you see her hair out in the front, and then they always say don't touch it. You know, even though you're working hard grinding your corn, don't touch your hair. I don't, leave it alone. And that's going to represent the longevity. And then at the end of the ceremony, you notice that they usually they tie the hide of the CA right here on the right side in the sash belt, between the sash belt and the belt. And then they make the girl's hair out of the tzitlof, the regular yarn. And that can be made of yarn, wool, really just depends on your preference again. And then lastly, I just wanted to conclude my portion with being in tune with yourself and how your outfits and your adornments, your garments that you wear, that are, tied to not just being like, physically on you as clothing or jewelry, but learning to do things on your own. That's a part of the Diné philosophy. Yse bansija kesto do de la hagi eya echtolit. So if you're not being silly and you're not putting yourself at a limit, you can do it. You can sew, you can weave, you can do everything. And I'm fortunate enough to come from a mother who says that to me. Oh, that's real expensive. I want to buy. Expensive is, you can make it, you can do it. And she always has that positive thinking about you can do it yourself. Like, she's very optimistic. And all the way down, even when I was younger, when you were talking about sewing prom dresses, I remember I was like, I'm gonna buy this one, and they're like $200. And she's like, 200, we're not spending 200. You're gonna, let's go to Hobby Lobby and get the fabric, and then we're gonna sew it and see how we can do it, and it comes out beautifully. Her clothes, and she always says, well, and I always say, Mom, how come you never like complain? And it's so hard to sew. And she's like, if you're invested in your children, if you love them, you're going to do, what you can to help them. And so I really appreciate that. And then it goes alongside weaving. I was fortunate enough to learn how to weave as a little child. Like, I used to jam out to KTNN, KNDN, eating sunflower seeds, sitting with my bijike and learning how to weave. And then I found out that there was a Navajo Sheep is Life project that was happening on the reservation like in 1993. And they all came out and they gave me a trade. I traded my first rug for a 4-horn sheep. And that was the beginning of my flock. And that's when the instillment of what's important is put into your mind and your ability to live. So that's when they were saying, hello, God. I'm all small. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it means that you have to have a flock. You have to have some type of stability, and it's going to provide for you. So from there, you get wool, mohair, you can weave a rug, you can weave yourself a dress. And then carrying on my grandparents' ways of living, that's who I really represent. And I like it. I like the fact that they always allowed me to be creative and be who I am. And then being comfortable in expressing my daily outfits. I try to dress up every day, and I try to be that person, like I said, that someone may see as a role model or an inspiration, and being content. And then honoring my heritage. I like it. I like being out there, and I like being comfortable in my daily velveteen shirts and skirts and jewelry, because ultimately that's who I am. That's never going to change. And as I get older, I'm like 34, I'm hoping by 50 that I don't have any more regular manufactured clothes. I have only my Diné wear to wear. And as I look at my closet, it's beginning to be that way. I have a couple of skirts and dresses, and I'm just like really happy that, I'm progressing in the way I set myself out to do. And the concept to the spiritual connection in the universe is always going to be there. Reverence, being in tune with your surroundings and mindful of your soul. Always protect your soul. Being proud of your heritage, respecting the ceremonies associated to being a Navajo woman. The stones are living. They're always going to protect you. In spirituality, and it identifies us ultimately when you wear at least one dot. Remember, they always say, and you're like, yeah, and they're like, you have one stone, that's good enough. The holy ones, the Diné, are looking down to you, say, hey, look, there's my little grandchild getting up at 6 a.m. to go run. Let's go bless them. That's that's the reality of who we are and who we're becoming. So thank you for listening to my small presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and give the time over to my younger brother. Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to talk and I'm mute. All right, so I will get started. Hold on. So sister, and I went over everything already of who we are as a family. We're the same clans. Okay, let me go ahead and get started. So, all right. So once again, my sister went over, who we are as a family, where we do come from. And here on my portion of the presentation, I'll be going over, the modern aspect of sewing. So just with myself being I want to say a designer because I don't know how to describe myself. Just kidding. But for an individual who does make outfits, I do go through a lot of, I would say, feedback now. I mean, it could be criticism, but it's just a lot of information that's given back to me because of the outfits that I do make. So we'll go briefly into various slides, but here once again, just to show, who my inspirations were. A lot of it does target my mother. Basically, she's there in the gold shirt. She was the one who is my Yoda. So, I was there, younger growing up. She taught me all the secrets of sewing, all the hacks. And of course, the grandmother, because everyone in my family, each of them had a different take on what is a traditional outfit. So, and we go on to, all of the outfits that my family, we did all create for our only, my only sister. So that was one thing, we did spoil her a lot. But just going back to the presentation of, where we come from, 2 Gray Hills. So these are all rugs. The majority of them I wove. Whoop, whoop. Then, just where we are, our community. This is where all pictures taken in our area, just showing, where we come from as, rug weavers, as a family. Whether it was, a piece that my mother wove, a piece I wove, a piece our grandmother wove, a piece our aunts wove. So just showing, that, community spirit, 2 Gray Hills, 2 Gray Hills. Just kidding. But going back to the presentation now, so a lot of it did go on touch of what, the significance meaning of, what we do wear. So they do have a lot of representation, and how individuals should dress are the one of the comments of, I get frequently, because I do make clothing, is what does each piece mean? What does it represent? What does it mean in our Navajo culture? What is the Nebe? So going quick over just another quick overview of what my sister just went over. So basically, when people refer back to traditional, a lot of it would refer back to when, changing woman was first dressed during her Canada. That's going to be where a lot of, clothing came into place, what would be seen as traditional. So when she was going through that process in her Canada, she was adorned with various aspects of life, or different aspects of life, became her garment, became her jewelry, became her moccasin, became her sash belt, became her hair. So when you hear those songs, when you go into a ceremony, especially, the Canada or they sing the songs there, they tell you what you're putting on. And that's going to be the same thing with the male when they had their journey to their father. They were given these different, another aspects of life were given for them for protection because they were going into battle. So there, a lot of the things that men, boys, they do wear, a lot of it represents, them being a warrior, being protected, being able to protect for their family, to show that, these things do represent a lot when these individuals were dressed. So it does refer back to a lot of, changing women and the hero twins of when you would say our first, individuals were dressed and how a Navajo should dress. But with that said, our people, Navajo people, we had a lot of encounterments with multiple, other individuals who were not Native, whether they were Native or not. And a lot of them would come, the Mexico area, the Spaniards, the conquistadors, those had a huge impact on our Navajo people because there, you begin to see that transition of clothing because when each generation, a lot of us are going to have, and it was mentioned with my sister that everyone's going to have their own perspective of what traditional outfit is. So on my take, being an individual that makes clothing, I get approached a lot indicating that, that's not traditional, that's not sacred, that's not what our people wore. But when we go back into history and we see that transition of our encounterments of multiple, you would other ethnicities, you would say that the fabric has changed, the view on traditional has changed because we had to adapt to the various to our life because of these new things we had to adapt it in our lives. And one of the huge things we had to adapt after the Navajo long walk. So there, we were given a lot of rations, a lot of things was taken from us as Navajo people. Some of our families may have gone through the Navajo long walk to Haweles, some may have not, some may have still have hidden out here on our Navajo land. But there, once again, there's going to be another transition of how our people had to adapt to see where our clothing began to change again. So when rations were given back to us after the Navajo long walk, we saw a lot of various fabric change. You saw more of the velvet, you saw more of the cotton, you saw more of the satin, a lot of things changed. You saw a lot of the men, they started wearing what the US Marines were wearing, or the soldiers, army, they started wearing button-up shirts, they started wearing pants, they started wearing hats. So you see that transition in Navajo clothing. So there it begins to change again because we may have multiple generations here on Zoom that are going to view and see things differently. And then next, another after long walk, we had boarding schools. The first phase of boarding schools to strip that identity of Native people, where it was save the man, kill the Indian. So there, you have a lot of individuals who gone through this process where they were completely, stripped from who they were. And there, a lot of clothing had changed again because there is a lot of Western influence after this had occurred with our Navajo people. So when people begin to indicate, that's not traditional, what are you wearing? That's not traditional fabric. So a lot of it does go back into that timeline of our first encounterments of how things started to change when we started implementing a lot of, different types of fabric, a lot of jewelry, silver, and we were talking about trading, all of that, comes into place of who we are now as Navajo people of what we view as traditional clothing. Because even now you see on social media is probably the biggest, war within our own Native people because they're like, Navajos like to steal everything. They like to copy, they like to steal this design. But, in reality, and when we talk about our traditional clothing and we're buying our fabric from various stores, that's, we don't know where that came from. We don't know where this type of fabric came from. It came from, foreign land. It came from overseas. It was shipped into the US and we purchased it, at local stores. So there, when people start saying about how things, that clothing, how they view certain things as traditional, a lot of it has to come as a whole, how we view things, because we look back at our history from our creation story to now, how much, things we had gone through as Navajo people and how we had to adapt. All right. So there you see in this picture, primary, a lot of clothing is associated with females in Native culture. So there you see a transition. You see how in boarding school, like I mentioned, they were stripped of identity, the first phase. There you see them in their nice, velvet blouses adorned with silver work, and then all that's taken away. So when we go back to saying, what is traditional, a lot of it would refer back to our the rug dresses for the female. And you see that, frequently nowadays that you do see people, they still have it. they have that. They see this as traditional. This is traditional because it comes from the sheep, everything from Mother Earth. It basically, that whole process, for those of you who are familiar with weaving, you know that process from caring for the sheep, from shearing of the sheep, from cleaning of the wool, to carding, to spinning. And if you use the natural dyes, you know that process of how long it takes, because then this would be considered traditional if, depending on, what generation you grew up with. And you do see the changes throughout years when we have, the encounterments that a lot of times, then we have the encounterment with the Spaniards, and a lot of the 3-tier, 4-tier, the skirts came into place, a lot of the use of the rig racks, the use of the ribbon work. And you see a lot of the individuals learning to adapt to silver. And you see how much that has changed with the years as well, of how, now we see a lot of clustered work. And we see how, talented our people are and how they have adapted and grown, and see the transition of our clothing. And these you would see more of, present day. We see a lot of individuals adorned with coins, because then, when we had encounterments with the US government, our people, money wasn't a huge factor. It was, what do we do? A lot of it was replicating and putting on to their clothing to show, and then also to create that significance back of how Indian woman was dressed, to be adorned with various, stones, the various, the silver, to reflect, who they are, to be protected as well. When we look at the men as well, we see a lot of individuals, today, on the next slide, you would see, I'm sorry, yeah. So you would see, back when our warriors were captured, you see how the transition of clothing came with men as well. A lot of things come into play with jewelry. One thing our people like to do nowadays is characterize and say that's for men, that's for women. You're a man, why are you wearing a naja? A lot of things back then, a lot of our people, they wore the plain silver work. It was for both men and women. Today, we like to categorize everything and to say that you're wrong, that's wrong, that's only for a man, that's only for a woman. Yes and no. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of individuals on here. We may all have a disagreement, or we may agree. Because we were all, once again, we were all raised differently. We all have a different background, and we all come from a different generation. And you see, again, once again, in men, a lot of things have changed over the years. Oh, look at just cute little lamb. Butcher it. Just kidding. And hey, so you see that once again. And a lot of things when we refer back to how Navajos are how we're supposed to dress, a lot of things have changed. Like I said, a lot of times you see to the far left, the older gentleman, you say that's traditional. Men will wear the Western shirt with their jewelry. Or when you see a man on this side with the far right in the purple, that, that's not traditional, that velvet's only for women. So those are things myself that I hear, constantly, that, a lot of things that, men wear a velvet shirt. What are you doing? That's for a woman only. You're wearing a woman blouse. So those are a lot of things that do come into play when it comes back to what is traditional, what is our, how are we supposed to dress? So that's the part a lot of individuals don't see, is that portion from our creation to all of the encounterments that our people had gone through to adapt, and then to today. So going back onto looking how things in a modern perspective. So I did create this calendar, oh my gosh, over a decade ago. I'm that old. But here it kind of gives you a glimpse in modern day of what our people did go through. So today, individuals would think, okay, this is a traditional outfit. It's 2022. This is what I wanted to wear on graduation because it's Navajo. And then the same thing with the male, the more pleats, the more studs. And then we have that transition again where individuals, we had that encounterment with Pendleton, and that it will replicate, the Navajo rug dress. So that would be considered, again, traditional from another perspective. And then the same thing with males, more larger jewelry. Then we had another encounterment where women wore the full velvet outfits, velvet top, velvet skirt. So there, you see that people will consider this traditional again. Then our older generation, where it was the velvet top and cotton skirt. So you see that's traditional. This is what grandma wore. Then before we had another encounterment where it was velvet tops and satin skirts. That this is another perspective from another individual that this would be seen as traditional. Then we have our Navajo rug dress where this was taking place, that this is traditional because it came directly, from Mother Earth. Everything was from, it came from life, the sheep. It came from, from the individual that took their time out of their life to, card, to spin. So that's just a quick timeline to show, a modern perspective of what traditional could be. Then, as for myself, I'm going into, taking on those perspectives and then just showing you guys, a collaboration of my family's work that's shown, whether it was myself, whether it was my mother, whether it was our grandmother, our aunt, or even our cousin, brother as well. You will see the various transition and clothing from them as well of how they took on of what Navajo outfit is supposed to look like. So here you have outfits that, my mother created and then also myself. Then you have outfits that I created as well. Then you have outfits that was a mixture of, a grandmother and our aunt. Then a mixture of, our cousin brother, our mom, and then myself once again. Then you see everything created by, one person here. And then our mother again. And then a mixture of myself and my mother. And then a mixture of everybody again. You do see the quick variations of everyone's clothing of how, they are similar. And it was made by different generations that, it still has that same essence of who we are as Navajo people and how it does reflect back of how, representing of how Changeun was first dressed, how the hero twins were dressed. So going back into today of how individuals do see, Navajo clothing, once again, a lot of time they tell you that, when a male dresses up and they're wearing velvet, that's one thing I get approached a lot is that you're wearing a woman's shirt. Why are you wearing women's clothing? Or you're wearing, women's jewelry because of the clustered work or the, the bigness of the stones or anything in those perspective are things, I get back a lot is that you're wearing women's clothing and women's jewelry. But it's going back into like, that I understand where you're coming from, but my mom made me this shirt. But things in that area is like we're not gonna understand where you're coming from. Then as well as the females, a lot of things I get back from my clothing is that what you're making is not traditional. My grandma would not wear that. My grandma has a lot of questions. So majority of times you do question them as well, because it's like when you refer back to those previous photos I showed you of, then the time before, long walk or after long walk, you see our women, they're adorned with velvet, they're adorned with coins, they're adorned with all of, the jewelry, and you see that transition where somewhere along, I'm not sure where it happened, but like I said, it's just that transition where things became less, adorned. And for myself, I'm going back, a lot of it are, my female, a lot of them are my biggest customers. So a lot of it does go back to royalty as well. So that's one thing my sister did touch over already, that, you're Navajo, you really do not have a reason, to dress up because, you're Navajo, you're born Navajo, or you're born Diné, that, be proud of who you are. that you don't need necessarily a reason to dress up. We may joke with our sister, our mom, grandma, when they put on a skirt or some type of jewelry, like, where are you going? Who you try to impress? Just kidding. But, that's just jokingly, because, that's things that we hear when we dress up, is that, well, we need to have a reason to dress up. But when you're Navajo, you really don't. You want to go check the mail, do your dress to the 10, go dress to the 10 and check your mail, go grab a slush puppy, go buy a hot Cheeto. Just kidding. So really, a lot of things, and people, they do look back. Here's just a few more photos. So the one thing that had changed over for myself were the overlay skirt and the use of rig rack. So when you look back into older photos, you do see a lot of use of rig rack. But within I'm not sure if it's just me, but each, as I got in my work out there, it was like the biggest, attack. Social media and in person, people can be, they can be ruthless. Like, you want to fight? Just kidding. But that's a thing. That's a thing that, there's not one certain way to make it. There's not one certain design that's owned by somebody, because in reality, when you look at all the outfits, someone had created before you, someone already had done it that may not have been on social media. So there's not one way. That one thing, I've taken on and, learned from my mom, is that, you don't own any of these designs. A lot of you're going to learn how to, help other people, help them create, help them be, Navajo. So when I started making more clothing with a rig rack, one thing I got hit the most was, why are you trying to be Apache? That's Apache's material. You shouldn't be using rig rack. That's not traditional. Once again, you look back into a lot of older photos, and you see how that use of rig rack was used. And then you go back into what I've been, I guess, known for now, is the overlay sheer skirts, the one at the far left there in the green. I've been told again, that's not traditional. What are you trying to be? You should stick to our traditional, fabric, traditional clothing. Why are you trying to be somebody else? But it's like, stop. You got to look back at where all of these fabrics came from. None of these were produced, on Navajo land. A lot of them are imported. We don't know where these fabrics came from. Maybe we shouldn't be buying these types of fabric. We should all go back to a rug dress. So those are things, just that just go through, my mind as well when I hear those types of comments. And I do get them a lot constantly. If you guys seen my social media, I get all nautical and about to cry. Just kidding. But I do post, some of those feedback. I guess feedback can call them that. But then you see that, it still has that essence of Navajo. It's very modern, but it still has that same essence of updating, proportions, updating, what grandma wore, something similar to the far, right in the red, then just updating it and updating proportions. So you see that it just has that same essence, but it's just, different fabric that people are not used to seeing. And the other thing that was hit most when I began sewing were the buttons. So you see there, a lot of it would refer back to, the yoche, how a lot of our women decorated shirts. And then today, it's not seen as traditional. They're like, what are you trying to do? Like, what are you trying to be? Like, that's too much. And it's like, no, that's a lot how of our grandmothers wore our shirt. How they, a lot of it may be in a modern design that has that same essence. So that's a thing that's been, hit on my end. I'm presenting now, basically, how that view of how people view traditional outfit has changed over time. So how I view it, it's not going to be the same as yours. Maybe it is. Those are just things that I get back when I create these outfits from individuals who don't view it from my perspective. Then the other portion that I hit the most when I started creating more of the floral scarf skirts. So they told me, why are you trying to be, Hopi? Why are you trying to be Zuni? Why are you trying to be a Pueblo? That's their culture. We should stick with our regular cotton skirt. trying to be other tribes. It's like, no, these scarves are not even associated with any native tribe. They're actually from overseas or from a foreign country. So technically, trying to explain that process, like I was trying to change that mindset of showing our, educating people that, over the years, over you would say over 200 years, our clothing has changed, but it has still kept that same essence. So even going back to, cotton skirts, a lot of people, like my sister went over, people will have their own perspective of how much gather should be on a skirt. And that's one thing has changed. When you look back into a lot of our older photos, you look back at our great grandmothers or maybe even a few grandmothers that are still alive today that their skirts were full. Today the feedback I get is your skirts are too heavy, they're too gathered, they're too long. That's not traditional. Traditionally, they should be lightly gathered. They should be above where the moccasin should show. So you see that transition from generation to generation of how people view outfits differently. Just coming from my own family, all the skirts, they were made towards the ankle. They were, you would say, gathered a lot. A lot of it was mobility. Growing up around, a lot of a household full of females, they wore their skirts. They were easily to sit down. They were easily to get up. They were easily to jump on a horse. They were easily, to kneel down and make bread and cook. Was that mobility. And when you have a lightly gathered skirt, your skirt's gonna rip. You can't jump on a horse with a lightly gathered skirt. So you see all of these different perspectives of what traditional outfit is, because like I said, it's going to constantly change. And the next few years, someone's going to have a different perspective again of that. It's going to be probably something completely different. But a lot of it, like I said, I do keep a lot of the traditional, the cultural essence of what it means, to be Navajo. And a lot of it's just an updating of modern fabric because, like I said, we don't know what new fabric's gonna be, how it's gonna change. And just from my own self, hearing everybody's, you would say feedback, a lot of it is just they're not, accustomed of what has changed over the years. I'm gonna keep saying that over. Here's just once again, mixture of satin skirts, overlay skirts. You have the full velvet. You once again have the satin. You have the overlay once again, whether it's the rig-rack work on the shirts or just the simple, pintucks or pleats. Then, photo shoots happen in my life. And because people wanted to see, my clothing on real people, that's one thing people didn't believe that people bought my clothing because they weren't, it wasn't accustomed to them. So when I did photo shoots, the girls in my photos, they would be, attacked because they're like, what are you putting on them? That's not Navajo. That's not who we are. But look how beautiful they look. Just kidding. All right. And once again, going back to what my sister already stated, that, at one point in time, all ages wore clothing. That's one thing, we always encourage as well, because, a lot of times, I personally don't like the term when they call it, masana skirts, because myself going around to workshops or presenting at schools at younger ages, and they're like, oh, that's masana's skirt, that's for old people. I don't want to wear that. So even ourselves as Diné, we embedded those in our kids' mind because they now that only clothing is worn by our elders. But when we look back in reality, at one point in time, we all wore it. It did not matter, how old you were. was, we were Diné. Cute little baby.
Wilfred, do you have an idea of how many dresses you've made in your lifetime?
Oh my gosh. So last year alone was just roughly over 700. So that was just last year. And then this year, right now, from January to the end of graduation orders is roughly about 250. So that's kind of just like an estimate, maybe on a year or a quarterly basis. But those are just, estimated numbers that I do, I guess, make. Then going back to the presentation that, like I said, our fabric, it's going to change constantly. So whether, like I said, a lot of people are going to have their own perspective in that, you can have fun with. You can make various skirts, especially, out of different type of printed fabric. And they may look fun, they may look silly, but it still has that Navajo essence and classy look to it. These were hit hard by me. No one accepted these mixed print skirts. It's always funny, like feedback I get. This is my athletic line. Just kidding. Great. So just to wrap it up, basically, once again, a lot of us, we're gonna have a different perspective because each of us does have a different background, whether we grew up, around our culture or not, or whether we heard of our stories from our grandmothers of, what is a Navajo outfit, whether it's a male or female, what scientific meaning behind, each garment. A lot of it's going to change, and in the future and going forward again, it is going to change again because ourselves, we don't know what's going to be, ahead of us. That a lot of times now, like I already mentioned, what I went over between the the floral scarf skirt, use of rickrack, the use of the sheer overlay, those were not already accepted. But, those are things that I just had to accept, and to also to keep continuing, making these clothing at, because it's something I do enjoy, and that there is, a lot of customers out there that do enjoy these outfits because it's, modern, but it still has that traditional, authentic look to it as well. All right. So that kind of does go over my portion of the presentation. And does anybody have any questions?
We have a couple questions in the chat. Let's see here. Alyssa asked, can you explain again why Diné women do not wear rings on the pointer finger or thumb?
Yes, so with the rings, so your thumb and your pinky and your pointer finger, you do not wear rings on there because in one explanation, it's a taboo because in our culture, when someone leaves the spirit world into their new journey, what they do is they clip or break stones off of these pieces that belong to them. And it indicates that that's theirs, that's their belonging. They're going to their next journey with those items, and it'll be on their thumb, pointer, or pinky. And you don't want to replicate that. You're living in today's world, and you're in our society with a breathing body, and you don't want to wish that kind of harm on yourself. Another one is the pointer. Your pointer is strong, has a lot of significance. And I always remember my his teenage John Slowboy. He was a medicine man that was married to my Nella Linda. And you remember when we had the disposable cameras? So it would rain really hard into Gray Hills and you see the double rainbow or a rainbow and you're like, oh, that's so beautiful. It's so pretty. Let me go take a picture. And then my aunt, my bishop, Mary would be like, hey, no, Tina, you don't do that. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just want to take a picture. And I'm like, ask Nella John then. And then she'll ask Nellie and Nella's like, no, you don't take pictures of those rainbows. And you know that already. Remember when you point to it, you use your thumb. If you use your finger, you're going to cut that rainbow and you're not supposed to be doing that. You're not an evil person. You don't cut things that are, given to us as a blessing. So that's kind of my explanation. So I try my best to reiterate that as at least on your ring finger or your middle finger is appropriate. So just don't wish that kind of like spiritual harm on yourself by putting those items on those other fingers, which, I've seen them like, especially on social media where people are showcasing their jewelry and they put it on all and you're kind of like, you're not supposed to do that. So that's my teaching.
Thank you. Bosna has a question. She says, I haven't seen any one-piece Navajo dress where it's cotton or velvet dress, not a blouse and a skirt. Is that acceptable as traditional dress? A one-piece dress?
Yes, I would say yes, only because, people do have that different combination. It's basically, what you feel or what you like. Like I said, everyone's going to have what they like and don't like. Because a lot of times now, what I have ordered, a lot of people don't like non-stretch velvet because it makes you skinnier. Just kidding. Or it's hard to move in. Basically, it's going to be what you like. And that's one thing when people do order, as one thing I advise them, there's a non-stretch, there's a stretch, there's a heavy cotton, there's a light cotton, there's a, depending on where you're going to be, a lot of it's going to be how you're going to be comfortable at what event you're going to.
Thank you. So we'll do one more question, and Tara Weeks, she says, do you, for Wilfred, do you have a formal clothing design education? Amazing work.
And educate. Well, as far as I guess teaching, a lot of it is just whoever does invite or request it if it works around my work schedule. That's one thing too. So I do work. So a lot of people think this is my full-time job, but sadly it's my side hustle. Just kidding. But I do, like I said, I do teach classes just depending where it's convenient for me. And a lot of time it's hard to do virtually because I don't use patterns. And that's one thing that has been hard when teaching classes because I don't use patterns. A lot of it's just cutting out squares. And then as we're sewing, we adjust our fabric, do the different various curves on the arm or around the waist, just depending where it's needed. And that's one thing that has been hard to teach because it was just how I was taught without pattern.
Thank you. Okay, we went over a little bit time, so I appreciate those of you who continue to stay here with us. And again, thank you to Winifred and Wilfred for sharing your knowledge and all your beautiful creations with us this evening. We really appreciate it. We do have this recorded, so we will get it uploaded to our Phoenix Indian Center YouTube page. And please share. Thank you so much, and everybody have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you.